Lindorf's latest amplifier features all digital design. It's got a color touch screen, room perfect calibration, and the only knob is the standby power button and the volume control.
I can understand you have a little fancy remote control touchscreen sits next to you and you want all the controls and things.
Yeah.
But am I really getting out of my easy listening chair and walking over, and then I got to put on my reading glasses?
That's where I was going.
Because, like, I'm an old guy.
The people that are buying this, that can afford this, respectfully are using readers.
Hell yeah.
And it's an itty bitty little screen.
What do I really need all that stuff on the front panel for?
We should absolutely be resting on our laurels, right?
Excuse me?
The madness stops here. Do you see that there is nowhere else to go? And Alexander wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. We done did the good cookie that everybody like, and now we get to go home.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Lindorf's new amplifier, Panasonic cuts, and spatial hearing on LGs. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek episode 484, Touchscreens and Fingerprints. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I am pleased to be joined by my good friend, Mr. Avi Rosenthal. He's a partner at BlueConnect Partners. How you doing, Avi?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. It is a treat for myself and everyone listening because it's just you and me. So we're going to have a blast.
This is very brave of you. I will
Brave?
say up front, it's very brave to have just me here. That's
Why?
very brave. We'll see how this goes.
Think how much we're all going to learn. And some people are thinking that's a lot, and some people are thinking the Billy Madison quote. And we're going to leave it there. All right. We are going to kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. Lindorf's latest amplifier features all digital design. It's got a color touch screen, room perfect calibration, and the only knob is the standby power button and the volume control, which better be stinking weighted for $4,500. Just I haven't
weighted with solid gold.
I haven't seen one, and if it is not weighted, myself and George Tucker are going to have a conniption.
There you go.
But go take a look at it. It is actually quite an interesting little unit. My personal favorite part, I don't know if you got as excited about this as I did, but 2x210 at 4 ohms is fan-stinking-tastic.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's got XLR outs, which just makes me smile.
Really, yeah. I
Makes
know
me
it's very
smile.
nostalgic, but like, what are you going to connect them to?
I don't care. I just want them.
Fair. Okay. I can't argue
Now,
that. No.
There's in the studio monitoring world, there are a large number of manufacturers that all make passive speakers with XLRs or speak-ons.
Yep.
Right. So for me, fantastic. Avi, there's a ton that we could kind of enjoy or have fun with this. What I found interesting was we seem to be at a point where we're putting touchscreens and I'm blanking on the word.
Capacitive touch.
Capacitive. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
On everything, including the things that don't need it.
I have a toothbrush that has capacitive touch on it.
Exactly. Because I look at this and I did have to Google how much this thing was going to cost, which was both equal parts more than I thought and less than I thought. Starting at 45 was not.
Yeah, 45, and first of all, I mean, it's an incredible amplifier.
It looks beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks gorgeous. It's an incredible amplifier. It is Lyngdorf. I mean, $4,500 to me did not seem out of the complete realm of reality, right?
Not for the realm it plays in, no. But what I love
I'll
was,
agree with you. The touchscreen on the front panel, is like, I can understand you have a little fancy remote control touchscreen sits next to you and you want all the controls and things.
Yeah.
But am I really getting out of my easy listening chair and walking over, and then I got to put on my reading glasses?
That's where I was going.
Because I'm an old guy.
The people that are buying this, that can afford this, respectfully are using readers. They got to get the cheaters out.
But
And
no
it's an
25-year-old is
little
going to
screen.
afford this thing. Yeah, exactly. And so now I'm bent over the rack. I'm squeaking it.
It's not in a rack. No, it's sitting off a little console down low under the turntable.
Oh,
so they
dear
can
God,
go,
that's even worse.
Yeah, it's in the dark.
Yeah, right? Oh, no. See, they should have spent the money, give me a nice little control I can hold in my hand, like my iPhone or my iPad, and I
Yeah.
can see right in front of me, and I can do. So, I don't know. And then, of course, you got to ask yourself, once it's set, right?
Mhm.
So once you set the thing up, and it's got all this great technology in it to help you set it up in the room,
Yeah.
and obviously an integrator is going to come and do this for you anyway. So, like, what do
I don't know about that one.
What do I really need all that stuff on the front panel for?
Here's why.
Go
I
ahead.
can tell you. So that when you're sitting in that comfy Hermes chair
Yep.
that you love, that mid-century one that
Absolutely.
you scoured, New England for.
Yep.
You can sit there and go, there's fingerprints on that. That's 100% why.
Oh, you had me going. Oh, that was brilliant. Oh, I love that. Oh, and it's so true, because I'd be
You're
the
welcome.
guy sitting there. It would be, like the most phenomenal music.
Martha,
is that
I
a
need my
smudge?
gloss clean.
Right? Is there a smudge? Wait, it's a smudge. Look at this. Wait, I got to get up. And then I'd end up ruining all the settings, because I would just grab a cloth and swipe the screen, and then that's it. I would. Oh yeah. Oh, poor Linda. My apologies to Lingdorf. It's still a phenomenal piece.
It looks
of gear.
fantastic.
Yes.
Send me one. I'll happily review it.
Right. I'm assuming they'll have it at CEDIA, and we'll all get to hear it, and I'm looking forward to that.
It looks super cool.
This is definitely one of those, in product development, we always say, just because a thing can be done, should it be done?
The other thing I saw the other thing I saw that I was interested with is another obscure-ish, politely, respectfully, all these things, device that has Rune in it. Rune keeps popping up in the middle of nowhere with these random manufacturers. I'm continually intrigued by this, because I never hear about it except in these kind of situations and these kind of products.
Maybe the Rune salespeople are really good at taking the engineers out to lunch, and so they convince them to put the software in the. I will agree with you. It's niche, but at the same time, it serves a purpose. It has a cult following. It's got so from that perspective, I can understand if I'm the Lingdorf guys and I want to make this a really complete system.
It's a good opportunity. I like it.
Exactly. So. But there are so many of these high-end niche audio systems out there right now.
Yeah.
Right? These platforms that are all trying to break out. God bless them. I mean, with memory being as cheap as it is, why not?
Yeah.
What does it take for them to put it in there?
No, it's super, super cool. And it is one of those products that, again, is it accessible? Not at all. But
I don't think it's meant to be accessible.
No, it's not. It's not.
No. I really don't.
Like it, though.
I don't think it's meant to be accessible.
Although
I
love
do
to play with
question the why is it a 1/4 inch, a 1/8 inch headphone jack and not a 1/4 inch?
It has it had something else on the back. Sorry.
Oh, was it on the back?
Yeah, there's some.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, but I think, and I should pull this up, but I'm not going to do it right now. I don't think it's got a 1/4 on the back either.
So that intriguing.
Which is odd. Yeah, for your high performance headphones.
XLR, but only 1/8 inch.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, my friend.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They wanted, you know why? Because they made the button the same size as the jack.
Yes.
And so it's all about balance.
Right beside, hopefully, that weighted volume knob.
That weighted it damn well.
Yep. It better be weighted. All right. Let's change topics for a second. This also comes to us from CE Pro. We will not make as many jokes about this one. Panasonic plans to cut their global workforce by 10,000 people, or 4% of the current global workforce. They're trying to move towards a leaner operating principle base. Now, the majority of this is coming out of what looks like their battery development, their EV space, etc. But the article definitely notes They re-entered the U.S. market for TVs. Those got fairly good reviews.
Yeah,
Some
good.
even say
It's a nice
rave
company.
reviews.
Yeah.
They're talking about pulling out. They had a 17.5% profit loss the fiscal year through March, with sales dropping 0.5%, which is not necessarily there. But this is still an interesting note. Is this just part of this global move that's kind of happening right now?
Yeah, look, we don't get political on this show, and we're not going to get political today. So we're only going to talk about some of the realities that everybody is dealing with. And right now, the number one reality is some uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some uncertainty in the world, no matter what country you live in. I was in Asia a 3 weeks ago. There's uncertainty there. There's uncertainty here. I think Panasonic is also looking at this as an opportunity with some of the uncertainty in the marketplace to trim, tighten their belts a little bit, trim some fat. 4%, 10,000 people is a horrible number, right? I mean, if you're one of those 10,000 workers, right? But 4% is not a big deal at the end of the day, right? 4% of your workforce is not a huge amount of your workforce.
Tell that to the 4%.
I would be, yeah.
Sorry, I said we weren't going to make jokes. I'm sorry.
We weren't going to make jokes. Exactly. This is real people's lives, and we're going to keep it serious. But at the end of the day, I do hope that they give the television marketplace some room to grow. I hope that they do that. I think the integrators were excited about it. When I saw it at CES, there were some really cool models coming out. It's very exciting that they're coming back in. I think there's room in the market. In deference to our friends at Sony, LG, and Samsung, there's definitely room in the marketplace for them. Oh, yeah. But I think this has much more to do with the EV market than it does with the standard electronics market. The EV market is, you think our market is a little topsy-turvy right now. The EV market is just chaos, right? It's just absolute chaos. So, excuse me, I think it has more to do with that than it does really us. But look, the world is a little bit of an uncertain place right now. There's opportunity for people who can take advantage of uncertainty.
Yep.
And that's really what we have to do as an industry, is we have to look for those opportunities. Don't be scared of those opportunities. Embrace them, because we'll still be here when the chaos is done.
Yeah. And I think and again, I don't want to diminish the impact of this, especially for obviously those workers at Panasonic.
No.
But it was announced like a week ago that IBM cut 3% of their workforce. CrowdStrike just cut 5%. I'm on a website right now that's listing them, and like everyone from NetApp to Electronic Arts to Expedia to Meta, Intel, Turo cut 17% of their workforce. Google's got a cut. TikTok, like it literally, and those are the ones. Those are some of the ones since 4.6.
Yes,
it just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls. Everybody's laying people off. Heck, Hewlett Packard laid off 2,500, which is 5% of their workforce, right?
Yeah.
Like this is just. I think sometimes we make too big of a deal of this. We were somewhat guilty of that when like Sonos lays off people, right? We make a huge deal about it, even though it's, and again, I'm not trying to trivialize it, but
no, and we shouldn't trivialize it. But I mean, look, the people that are let go, there's going to be good people. There's going to be people that maybe were underperforming within their marketplace. But there's also opportunity here. The what you want to watch is not just the layoffs, but you want to watch where all these people entering the workforce then come back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. There's a big shift. Microsoft lays off a group of people. Google's phone starts to ring off the hook. Google lays off a group of people. AWS's phone rings off the hook. So there's sort of a revolving door within the tech sector, if you will. The other ones, the agricultural sector right now, obviously, John Deere's laying people off as well. You mentioned Toro. So there's definitely movement in the industry. And I think this also goes back to, it's very cyclical. We had the pandemic. Everybody shuffled. Everybody came back into the workforce. There was very, very low unemployment worldwide. There was very low.
Yeah, it was massive.
This is the cycle that, unemployment reached a trough, a bottom number. You're never going to reach perfect unemployment, right? We're never going to have zero, but it reaches down into the 2, 3, 4% range. And then there's a turnover, right? And people they get bored with the job. They want to find something new. There's new opportunities. There's new startups. Right? So people do a lot of move. I'm one of those LinkedIn watchers, right? I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. I do a lot of connecting on LinkedIn. I have lots of conversations on LinkedIn. And there is definitely a large number of opportunities in our space right now. If I track the big guys, the Control 4s, the Snaps, the ADIs, these guys are all looking. There's a whole bunch of startups that are looking. There's a whole bunch of new AI companies that are looking. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of companies that are entering our space, embedding AI into other products that are looking for talent. And so I don't see it necessarily as a completely bad thing that you have this cycle. The news likes to make a lot of it. I agree with you. When Sonos lays off, they laid off 500 people. Oh my God, 500 people. What are they got? The truth is they probably have that kind of turnover in a normal year.
Yeah.
Right? People come, people go. They're very big organizations. I mean, look, Panasonic lays off 10,000 people and it's only 4% of their workforce. It's a horrible number, right? You think about 10,000 people losing their job, but at the same time, it's 4%.
I think what gets, and I loved your point there about how everyone else's, all the competitors' phones are ringing, right? Yeah. Because so often I think we kind of look at these numbers in a bubble and go,
right,
oh, that's 10,000 people that are going to be
on the bread line tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're in the, gosh, my brain is not working today. They're at the food bank.
Right.
And maybe some of them are,
but it would be a horrible thing if some of them were, yes.
But typically when this happens, it's because, again, in this point, it looks like it's the EV space.
Yeah.
They're just going to go get a job somewhere. And again,
go to the next battery guy.
I'm not trying to simplify it, but they're not going to be able to work for a year.
No, hopefully not. Hopefully, as long as the economic engine keeps running, theoretically, there's spaces and places for these people to land outside of the organization that they were with, right? And that's the interesting part.
Yeah, I remember years ago when Harman, before they were purchased by Samsung, mm-hmm. they had a massive layoff.
Yeah,
and I knew a ton of people there, and it was tough for them for a while.
Yeah,
but they were all. It wasn't, respectfully, it wasn't the janitors that were getting laid off. No. It was talented people, and the majority of them within 3 months had landed a new gig. And it took that long just to iron out the contracts. Right.
And the other nice thing about these typical large layoffs is there are severance packages that go along with them. Yes. There's assistance in getting them into the next places. So it's different than, you walk in on a Friday and you're fired, get the hell out because of malfeasance or something. Everybody understands that companies grow and shrink on a regular basis.
Yep.
And so I think, look, it's one of the things that I try to do in our industry, because you and I, for instance, are so well connected to so many different companies. We tend to be the first phone call, right? Yep. Somebody I know or worked with in the past gets laid off. They text me, all right, I was part of that head chopping. Can you help me out?
Yeah, if you know anybody, let me know.
Right, because I'm talking to somebody else who's like, oh, if only I had a really good marketing guy to do this. Like, have I got a guy for you? Right?
I know somebody.
I know a person over here. I know a guy. So I think that there's an opportunity there to support our industry. Not saying that the 10,000 people from Panasonic are necessarily, integrators that we know. No. But I think it's an opportunity. It's one of the ways that us old veterans, and I'll put you in that category just for a moment with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. But it's how we can support, because we're always hearing about our industry not having enough people, not having enough talent. How are we going to get the new people in? How are we going to get the next generation to take our industry as seriously as this generation did? Mm-hmm. So I think there's an opportunity here for us to grab these talented individuals that are being laid off by some of these really great tech companies, and bring them into the fold, right? And bring them into the fold. And again, I'm not going to point fingers, but I'm going to look in the direction of our friends in Indianapolis who have opportunities to reach out to these as an organization and say, hey, we've got a training program, right? Or we've got the Paul Starkeys of the world and the Helen Hennefelds of the world who have really great programs to position people into new jobs and to fill these positions. So, yeah, I don't think we should always look at it as all doom and gloom. I think we should look at it more as an opportunity. You take an engineer who's trained at Panasonic, man, I'd love to have that person as part of my team.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, and again, I'm not trying to belittle any of this. It's always trying for any family to go through this. These are uncertain times. This is difficulty, but I think we have to look at this as the opportunity that it is.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it, and I'd agree with you on it. All right, let's change topics. Again, this comes to us from Residential Systems. LG Electronics adds Kardome spatial hearing AI into its smart TVs. It enables smart devices to hear like humans do. Go read through the article, and then I would implore you to go to Kardome's website, because I'm going to guess none of you have ever heard of it. And if you have, kudos to you.
I did not hear of it.
I knew of them, but I didn't realize what.
Not me. Like, brand new to me. So I fully admit I have to go research.
Yeah. So essentially, what they're doing is they're adding the way I'm parsing this is that they're essentially taking sort of kind of like the beamforming microphones that we use in commercial environments, in boardrooms, to pick out the active speaker and then focus on their voice, right? They're using that to go in and hear who's talking to them when, like who's talking to the TV, trying to use the voice assistant. And again, you'll get a really good overview of this if you go to the Kardome.com website and check out their speech enhancement. What they're kind of doing is using source separation software to treat each person in the environment as if they are the only person talking, beginning, end quote, all that jazz. Avi, I'm very intrigued with this.
As am I. And I appreciate I appreciate the guys at Resi Systems writing about this, because it's a little esoteric.
A little bit,
right?
But I'm looking at it and going, we don't use voice assistants in my house right now, but yesterday we were at my parents' house, and after dinner the kids asked if they could go watch a show, and I said sure. And I hear them using the essentially Comcast remote for all of my American friends, the Xfinity remote, to talk into it and say, play whatever it was. And my daughter's trying to do it, and my son is on the other side of the room trying to correct her to get the name right. And it took 3 times.
Siblings, don't they love each other?
All the time. And it took them 3 attempts to get it right, mainly because they're talking over one another.
Right.
That's what this is trying to solve.
And this is what it's trying to solve. And we have a similar problem. So we use lots of talking boxes, as I call them, in my house. And it's always, the years ago when we got our very first talking box, the kids were younger, and I instructed them, and I said, okay, if you ever hear somebody say the keyword, right? Like in our house, it's the A word. And I won't say it because she's over there and she's listening. Right. Whenever you hear somebody say that, you stop talking to allow that person to have the room.
Yes.
Right. And I sort of taught them. And so in my house, we were triggered. We're like Pavlovian dogs, that anytime you hear the A word, everybody stops talking. Right. But what I have found is we redesigned our living room space, our family room space, actually. And the talking box ended up closer to the TV than it was before.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it couldn't hear anything, right? It was sitting near one of the surrounds, and that was it. It only heard the surround, and we actually had to move it. So this is trying to solve that problem as well as the others. And I think it's really laudable. I mean, look, at some point we got to turn on the drinking game of every time somebody uses the 2 letters AI, they take a slug, because then our audience would really have a good time, because there's I was at Connections last week, and it was either tariffs or AI. Every session, we were either talking about tariffs or we were talking about AI. There was no in between. Every single one. But I think that this is a really great application of sort of this learning software. Sure, has similar software right in their boardroom systems, right?
Mhm.
And they, it used to be a hardware thing where you had to use specific types of microphones to try to
Yes.
figure out who was talking. Now the software is good enough that the software does it, and you can use less expensive hardware in order to achieve the same goal.
Mhm.
That's a really special aspect of AI that a lot of people are not talking about. This idea that you can use devices that are less expensive or not as sophisticated and make up the difference in software.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting application of AI, because imagine if they had the Kardome stuff in the Xfinity remote that your daughter and your son were trying to talk over.
Mhm.
Your daughter obviously being the primary voice, being closer to it, being the one who initiated the conversation, would be able to speak to it with it ignoring what your son was saying across the room. And it wouldn't take necessarily the Xfinity people to improve the MEMS microphone that's in order to do this.
Yeah.
One of the other companies out there that's experimenting a lot with this and having some really great success is the company that just bought the MEMS division of Knowles, and that's a company called Sentient. And Sentient has a hardware software based system that allows for the intelligence to be added to everyday devices, cameras, microphones, other things, so they can leverage edge processing, not have to go to the cloud, because then
Right.
you end up with these delays and other things, the privacy issues and other things about going to the cloud. They're actually able to parse this stuff on the edge. So you got, Halo AI and Sentient and some of the others that are doing it instead of going to the cloud, but they're leveraging this machine learning, this artificial intelligence, to be able to do it with sort of standard devices,
Hmm.
standard processors, inexpensive processors, standard microphones. That's really where AI starts to make changes in people's everyday lives that they didn't expect.
Right.
And they're going to be very subtle. So, LG, again, no surprise. They went out, they found a company that they can partner with. They're going to plug it into their televisions. I'm sure Samsung is doing something similar. I'm sure Sony is. But this is what, in my opinion, the first step to the idea that not only are devices getting more intelligent, but they're going to become more aware and much easier to interface with. And at the end of the day, the user interface between the machine and the human is really the barrier to entry right now. No matter how good it gets, we were talking about touchscreens,
Yeah.
right? We talked about the fact that cars are now moving back towards knobs because people like knobs. I still to this day miss my BlackBerry with the keys on it, with the buttons, because I still
Yep.
can't type on a touchscreen. I hate typing on a touchscreen. I'd go back to my BlackBerry with the key. I was fast. I was accurate because my thumbs would feel the bumps and feel where the letters were.
Yeah.
Touchscreens are just not as intuitive from that perspective. But if I could speak to my device in a much more natural tone, and it would get my idioms and it would get my New York accent and my Jewisms all the time, then it would be much easier for me to dictate to it
Yeah.
without having to worry about it, tripping over itself. So I think this is some really cool stuff. And again, LG, hats off to you for taking the first step.
Well, I'm really surprised at how occasionally it seems that some of these tech companies and the big ones overlook the fact that they can solve so much of this with software.
Yeah.
And they
Agreed.
just they seem to. We were talking before the show a little bit about vehicle entertainment systems,
Right.
and how poorly executed some of them are.
Oh yeah.
And
famously poorly executed.
Yeah. And how like a little bit of software queuing
Yep.
solves so much of this, but it so often seems to go back to a hardware application.
And I also think it comes down to, Matt, the amount of human interaction that is done during testing.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of product development in my day. And, I would have brilliant engineers working for me. Every single one of them was brilliant. But every single one of them didn't live the life of a 22-year-old woman or a 47-year-old man or a 33-year-old female or there's all kinds of different human beings in the world. And all the human beings interact with these devices differently. So no matter how sophisticated your engineering is, the human factor is the part where the real nuance, the real magic happens. One of the reasons why the iPhone was so incredible when it first came out is because it was a whole new way to interact with something that hadn't been considered before, right? And there is a myriad of really cool human to machine interfaces. The push button transmission, right? I'll date myself way back now, right? The push button transmission, or the flappy paddle shifter on the back of a sports car. There are certain, inflection points in user interface that change the way we perceive our interaction with the machine.
Yeah.
And sometimes the engineers don't take that extra step. Sometimes it's all about getting the product, the value proposition, or the excitement of the hardware takes precedence over, it takes 6 steps to get to that volume control. Oops, we didn't think of that.
I was on a call one time I wasn't doing consulting, but I was on a dealer panel.
Yeah.
And with a major manufacturer that you all know, and we'll leave it there. And we're having this conversation about the new activation protocol and the little code that you had to read off the device that's in a rack on the bottom of the device,
right,
to turn it on.
Can I?
And somebody kind of like put their hand up in the call and did it'd be great if that code was on the back.
Right.
And then I might have put my hand up and said, like, if it wasn't black on black, maybe if it was white, that'd be awesome.
Right.
And the look of the engineers on the call that are doing and we weren't the only people to have brought this up to them.
No. Yeah.
But there was a guy on the call who was one of the engineers, and he's like, shoot, that's brilliant.
Right.
I was like, how? How?
Because sometimes you don't see the forest for the tree, right?
No, you don't. And that's the problem.
And that's exactly, no. And that's, look, first of all,
it's human nature.
Right. Kudos to the manufacturer that they had a dealer council to at least bring you in to have this conversation. Yeah. I mean, back when I was an integrator, I got really good at reading backwards numbers and letters because I used to carry this little mirror, this little compact mirror with me. And I got really good. You'd put it behind the rack and you'd read off the numbers backwards because that was the only way, instead of crawling around
use
in
a
the
mechanics
back of the rack,
inspection mirror. Yep.
Exactly. I got this little compact that I stole out of my wife's. I still remember it was Clinique. I don't know why I remember that. That was
fancy,
but ridiculous. But I stole it out of the bathroom. I'm like, I need this little mirror. Like, you can't take my, like, you'll find another one. I got it.
You have 5. You're fine.
Exactly. You'll find another. But to your point, that's exactly. And look, what your integrators can take away from this, right? What the listeners can really understand is that when we do home installations, sometimes we also get mired in this. It's the technical aspect, it's the configuration, it's getting it to work without the view of the human being who has no idea whatsoever what this is or how it works. It's sort of the shorthand for us in the industry. There's not a piece of gear that you could put in front of me that within 5 minutes I can't make do anything because I've seen every other piece of gear before it. But if this is the first piece of gear you've ever seen, if this is the first time you've interacted with a audio system or this remote control, it can be daunting. And so our role as integrators is to remove those barriers, right? If the engineers and the manufacturer didn't get it done, then, we darn well better do it ourselves, because either that or it's going to be 11:30 at night and you're going to get that phone call.
Let's leave it there, Avi. Thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to connect with you, learn more about BlueConnect Partners, where can they do that?
So, BlueConnectPartners.com. We have a wonderful brand new website that we just launched. We're very excited about it. That's where they can find me. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, as I said, and Facebook and all kinds of places. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us as well. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on most of the socials. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
This is AVNation.
This is AVNation.